Well, it's a special series we're uncovering for you, American Values at the Crossroads. Taking on some of the most interesting topics, what I call cornerstone topics, things that we really need to dive into, more problem solving, which is sort of unique for radio. Welcome to our national radio audience and our television audience. Good to have you with us. It's Malcolm All Out here. Some of the topics, American innovation, world events, and the domino effect, and we're all seeing that play out in front of us, aren't we? Maximizing your career, the business side of things, privacy and security, the balance of. Can we have that balance, yeah? Healthcare, best in the world. What does that really mean, you know? Gifts from God, and freedom isn't free. So again, I call them cornerstone topics as we continue to peel the onion for you here. Get involved, get loud, and think on the brink. Today, we'll be talking about privacy and security, the balance of. And I want to read you this quote up front. I have little doubt that the author of our Constitution, James Madison, who cautioned us to beware the abridgment of freedom of the people by gradual and silent encroachments by those in power, would be aghast. And who said that? Federal Judge Richard Leon. That's part of the topic today, and we will dive into it. And I want to introduce you to three terrific gentlemen here. And let's start here with Kirk Burton. And Kirk, good to have you here with me. Good to meet you today. He's an innovation and knowledge guru, I call him, and that's good. You got innovation and knowledge. That's you got it all, right? He uses his diverse background to approach complex problems from new directions. Kirk believes that entrepreneurs hold the key to the future. You can connect with Kirk on Facebook, LinkedIn, Google+, Twitter, any of those sites, and we'll get into websites and all that later on. Also back with us, and he's certainly been with us several times before, one of our frequent contributors, technology expert Bob Francis. Bob is Milford Communications Partners, and so Bob was a founder and managing director of Jefferson Partners, Washington, D.C., which was a high technology practice, if you will, with a focus on satellite, internet, multimedia, and wireless technologies. And it's good to have Bob with us again. And also another new gentleman introduce you to, attorney Adam Bantner. And he's a criminal defense attorney with Brandon Legal Group, named Super Lawyers Rising Star from 2012 through 2015. That's good. And Adam calls himself a political junkie with key positions on political and legal groups. Good to have you here as well, Adam. So, all right. So I want to start here, and one of the things we play that our radio audience certainly knows about is the Out Loud Minute. It's nationally syndicated, plays on radio every day throughout America, and it's a topic that is very timely, what I call the balance of security and your privacy. And I want to play it right now for you, and then we'll talk about it.
Can government strike a balance between security and personal privacy? This is Malcolm Out Loud. France ordered prosecutors around the country to crack down on hate speech and anti-Semitism, announcing that 54 people have been arrested since the terror attacks in Paris. British Prime Minister David Cameron said there should be no means of communication which the government cannot read. President Obama has proposed new legislation just this week aimed at fostering increased sharing between government agencies and the private sector to help improve cybersecurity. Well, the out-loud truth is, we don't know if the info gathering will be used against us or for us. We don't know if rogue employees within these government agencies can be trusted with our sensitive information. Are governments worldwide overreacting under the guise of security? And you can get the rest of the out-loud truth back at malcolmoutloud.tv. You can...
So that's the minute, and again, that one played this week on national radio. So let's take it from the top here. So we've all been following the events around the world in recent days here. So France ordered prosecutors around the country to crack down on hate speech and anti-Semitism. This is since the event that just happened in France, okay? And so they announced that 54 people have been arrested in the past week for just for talking and stuff. And I mean, they didn't go out and shoot anybody. So this is since the terror attacks. Now, the French government is also working on new phone tapping and other intelligence efforts that it wants nailed down within the week. So they're pretty serious out there about what's coming down. I guess where I want to start is here. When you break it right down and you think about what we just talked about, aren't these tactics that France is using right now also an infringement on the freedom of speech that really that magazine Charlie Hebdo so vigorously defended and still is defending? Isn't what they're doing right now sort of right in the face of that, even though maybe it's a topic they don't want to talk about, but obviously these bad people do? What do you think, Adam?
I believe that, well, first of all, the freedom of speech is, in my opinion, a uniquely American value. I mean, certainly I think it has worldwide application. It should be applied across the globe. Right. But it is an American value. And France is going to do what they're going to do. And certainly that wouldn't work here. And I don't like it one bit. But just from a values perspective, you know, they're going to do what they're going to do, whether we like it or not.
Well, a lot of people, you think of France, you think, I mean, you get a more of a socialist feel of the government, I guess. I'm not sure what they call themselves these days. But, Bob, what do you say to that?
Well, I think the key issue, of course, is how do you balance my right to have privacy, not only in my telephone calls and internet, but, you know, mail as well. And, you know, the question that I saw from some commentators this week was, you know, saying, well, if they're going to listen to the phone calls and listen to my other conversations on the street, are they going to put a microphone in my bedroom? How far does it go? Right. And that's really an issue that needs to be addressed. We're fortunate in the U.S., as Adam said, that we go much further. But then there still is the right. How do you then find the bad guys if you can't follow the communication?
Well, and that's part of the real challenge of what we're going to talk about today and really try to uncover with some interesting points here. And I want to come over to you, Kirk, and ask you, we talk about in this country freedom of speech. I always sum it up this way: freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and freedom to be an idiot. Okay, these are all qualities that we have as Americans, and yes, we use all of them, by the way. Yes, we do. I see it every day on talk radio. So, but you know, as you take a look at this, I wonder, is there a double standard here? We will give people the right to speak and express themselves as long as they do it in an acceptable framework. So, for instance, if you're in a theater, you just can't shout out fire if there's no fire. That's one of the prime examples. Or can you? I mean, isn't that freedom of speech if you have a desire to say something? Or is that, again, in the hazard of, you know, the fact that there's really not a fire and you just want to cause a ruse here, right? That's not a problem. So what I'm wondering in the big picture, you know, I mean, should we change the words to freedom of positive speech and freedom of good expression? Should those be the words in the Constitution, I wonder?
No, I don't think so, because the diverse opinions are what make us Americans. The ability to disagree with our leaders, the ability to disagree with those in power and say, you know, I'm not getting what you're saying. Yeah. But you're right. To stand up in a crowded theater and say, fire.
Can't do it.
Can't do that.
Right.
So perhaps we need to look at the definition in terms of what does that mean? Is inciting people to violence the same as yelling fire in a crowded theater? And what does that mean?
What is it? What are the legal ramifications of that? Do you know, Adam?
Well, the legal ramifications, of course, the courts have reiterated that the governments, they can regulate the timing of speeches at some points. They can they regulate the place of speech, depending on other things that are going on. But content is something the courts are very, very hesitant, and rightfully so, to touch. Because if you start getting into content, then you start going down a huge slippery slope. Well, who's making the decision of what is good or what is insightful? And the courts have repeatedly said, no, you can't do that. Once you're getting into content, it's just untouchable.
So if you really break the words down from what you're both saying, it really isn't freedom of speech.
Well, I think in America we do have a lot of freedom of speech. We really do. I mean, I think sometimes it's reasonable to regulate time, place, but as long as you're staying away from content, people can be idiots, as you say.
Yeah. Bob, do you ever see examples where that's used against us?
Well, absolutely. But you know, one of the things that I believe very strongly is that I have the right to say things, but if I'm intelligent about it, I won't. So I have the right to say and the right not to say things. And this is one of the areas that I think we really need to work on in this country, is that even though I have the right to say fire in a theater, it would be stupid to do it. It's wrong. Even though I may have the right to make some other comments about religion or politics or people, no. You know, I have that right, but as an individual, I should not do that.
Yeah. Well, you know, in the case of this France deal and Charlie Hebdo, the magazine, clearly if they've arrested 54 people in the last week because they've used the wrong vocabulary or said the wrong things, and that's really what it is, you know, that really isn't freedom of speech, is it? And that kind of contradicts the whole movement of millions, like estimates were 3.7 million people in the streets. I mean, was significant. British Prime Minister David Cameron now says he's just come out and been pretty outspoken about it in the past week as well, that there should be no means of communication with which the government cannot read. Let's say that again, okay? So the Prime Minister says there should be no means of communication which the government cannot read. Now, this is England. This is the West. This is, you know, these are our ancestors.
Well, I'm glad we broke away from them 300 years.
Or so.
Or so, yes.
What do you think, Bob?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's absolutely...
Wow.
First of all, he doesn't understand technology, because what he's suggesting is that we have the ability to, that we shouldn't have the ability to encrypt our communications or make it secret, and that the internet has any way of keeping it that way. I mean, there's a lot of problems with what he's saying. He clearly doesn't understand communications.
Yeah. You know, he goes on to point to the terrorist attacks in Paris, David Cameron does, as evidence of why the government must have robust powers. These are his words now. Have robust powers through our intelligence and security agencies in order to keep our people safe. And it just kind of struck me with some of the things he said over the past week or two now. And, you know, and I start thinking a lot about, okay, then you had this whole Edward Snowden thing, and you had all of this has been ruffled up. And, you know, these people were all complaining about Snowden at one point, but I'm not so sure they have any right to complain about him at this moment, quite frankly, based on all of this. I mean, and they were all, Germany was livid and France was livid, but how do you think we got all this information? I mean, hello, and they knew it. It was public now, so everybody knew. I mean, this is all a bunch of rubbish. So what about that argument, Kirk, that government must have these, what I'm calling now, Malcolm has called them freedom invasions. I call them freedom invasions, okay? So the fact that government must have these freedom invasions, if they're to keep us safe, do you buy this?
No, absolutely not. You know, the people who want to get around those kind of things will figure out how to do it regardless. Right. If you cut off my access to an app that encrypts my communications, I'll hire somebody to build one for me. Right. To meet my purpose. Yeah. So it's a reactionary, you know, something very bad happened. People died. There's a call to action from the people. Do something. Unfortunately, when we do that, we don't, you know, back up and take a holistic look at the entire spectrum that we're attacking and do it smart. We put in, it's like sticking your finger in the dike, you know, expecting to stop the flood.
Which is kind of what we do in this country. I mean, we really never fixed the problem.
And like Bob said, it's a misunderstanding about technology and what the internet is. The internet is not a thing. It's a living, breathing ecosystem that changes by the millisecond.
What do you think, Bob?
Look at all of the encryptions and penetration of the encryptions and stuff like that we've had for the past 10 or 15 years. Right. And keep in mind that for the last, since 9/11, NSA has been recording a lot of conversations. Did that help them find in advance the guys that set off the bombs in Boston? No, it didn't. And the issue is that we have so much information that we haven't yet figured out how to access it and use it. But what we do have is this information being sitting in repositories that can be misused, and that's the issue that I get to.
Yeah, and that is part of what we do need to talk about and really understand that misuse of this information, Bob, and also, which we'll talk about a little bit after, rogue agents within these agencies, which we've already seen, by the way. We've seen it in a couple of them. We've seen it in the Homeland Security. We've seen it with the HHS, the Health Service. We've seen it with the IRS. We've seen it with several, and we'll get more into that. But again, this balance of privacy and security. Now you're seeing France come out. Now you see England and what they're saying, and you see the president, which we'll talk about, and what he is saying. There tends to be. I wonder. Are we overreacting? Is the world overreacting? And obviously, the terrorists have planted fear in everybody. There's fear. I think that's what the biggest problem I'm seeing. That's the word for me, fear. And as soon as they've put the fear into people, they've won, you see, in every way. And that all started back to 9/11, guys, where we started to lose our security and, our privacy and our security. We lost it all, We lost it at the airports. We lost everything, And to me, they won at that point. And I really attribute a lot of it to fear, that we've become so fearful of what might happen. Now, if you look at the stats, the chances of being hit from a terror incident, you have a better chance of winning the lottery or being struck by lightning. Do you know that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Isn't that amazing?
Sure.
It is.
It is so, minute. It is so minor. Yet we talk about it in 24/7 on the news channels. It's everywhere about fear, and people have now, it's like we've washed people of their lives into this fear, and I think people are working their lives around this. What do you think? Is this a mistake? Have we overstated this, Bob?
I think we certainly have. And the examples that have been thrown out is look at how many people are killed in automobile accidents, how many people are killed in other events, and how many people are killed by as you point out, the terrorist attacks. Very small numbers of people, and we get really concerned and hysterical about that, but we don't say much about a lot of the other things that are much more common and much more extensive.
Yeah, we don't say anything about any of it. I mean, if you think about it, but really, I've studied these numbers, and it's true. Now, clearly, the key word in terrorism, Adam, is terror. You see, and when you can put the terror in somebody, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, they want to put the terror in us so that we change our way of life, we change our culture, because they ultimately don't like how free we are. I mean, they come from a very dictatorial society, very top-down, very kind of march in order, or else you'll pay the price. And it reminds me of a quote that I heard. I think it's Ben Franklin back when. I'm sure I'm going to butcher it, but those that desire freedom at the expense of security will have neither. Yeah. And certainly, right. I think that's kind of the road we're going down, is we're so security focused that we're going to lose our freedoms. And a lot of times with government, they sell security, but what they're really doing is control, and that's kind of the backside that you got to worry about.
It is.
That's the slippery slope.
Mm-hmm. It's a slippery slope. Ben said a lot of cool things, by the way, and you're right on that. I don't think you were too far off on that one. And that slippery slope, Kirk, is dangerous. Are we losing or are we winning the game at this point, do you think?
I think we're losing the game. Mm-hmm. We're not out front. We're reacting. If you look at some of the assaults that we've had in terms of Target, Home Depot, mm-hmm. These systems that we design from a software point of view, they're hundreds of thousands of lines of code mm-hmm. that we build into a program. The hacker needs maybe 120 lines to hack it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And he's developed an exploit in a weekend that takes down what it took you millions of dollars and years to build.
Well, let's face it, it's a whole new world and it's a whole new war. It's a cyber war. And I think, I'm going to guess here, you guys probably know way better than I, but my guess is, I think we're probably at the very beginning of this war. I have a bad feeling about it. I don't feel real good about it, when you know that this technology controls our electrical systems, our water systems, our foods. It controls our everything. It controls our technology, our what's safe, what's not. I'm afraid that we're at the very beginning of this. You think?
Well, I do, and we're demanding more of it. The Internet of Things. Mm-hmm. When your refrigerator is going to be able to create your grocery list because it scans what you put in and take out.
Right.
As we connect more and more things, we just increase the vulnerabilities. But we want to do that for convenience.
And convenience and speed and technology, and it's cool, Kirk. We all Americans love cool, so,
But we have our priorities wrong.
Okay.
Because we have not hardened the power grid, for example. And look at how easy it is for the power grid to be brought down by some simple event.
So, Bob, why do we always wait in this country until it happens and then we react? Because what you just said is so true. And I've been so worried. I'll be honest with you, and I'm not a fearmonger or a pessimist, but I've been real concerned with our water supplies. I've been real concerned with our ports. I've been real concerned with these things, really concerned, because I think they know we're vulnerable.
Sure,
I've been real concerned with our borders. I've been real concerned with I think these are the areas. I don't think they're flying into JFK Airport next shot. You understand?
No. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the government certainly knows, but they choose to ignore the fact that it would be very easy to bring the United States to its knees with one simple rogue nation firing one simple dirty nuclear device off a little missile from the Atlantic Ocean 100 so miles offshore, creating the imp, which destroys all of the electronics within range.
Yeah. And
guess what? We go hungry. We have no water. We have no power.
Yeah. And sometimes you see these blackouts happen or brownouts, and and you say, "Oh, what if? What if? And what if?" And we've been very lucky, very fortunate to this point. And so many of our systems are outdated as well, and they just haven't been kept up at all. All right. So we're going to pause a moment here, but here's what we'll look forward to here as we move forward here again. Now, the real question we have to ask at this moment is, are governments worldwide overreacting under the guise of security? Is that really the key to this thing? I want to talk more about this CISPA thing and what President Obama is proposing that is going to impact all Americans just ahead here. And I think that's an important element. And also, we talked about that rogue agent in some of these agencies. I want to touch on that as well. Yeah. So before we do, I want to just take a moment and just tell you just a couple of quick things, some housekeeping things. And we have a brand new platform in 2015 you've got to go check out. You're here for the first time in this series. We created this for national radio. GetInvolvedGetLoud.com. Very simple. GetInvolvedGetLoud.com. From there, you can go anywhere on our platform, whether it's Malcolm Out Loud TV, It's Time to GetOutLoud.com, Creating a Mind Shift, all the various many things we have going on. You can subscribe to our program there as well. GetInvolvedGetLoud.com. So I want to give a quick shout out as well to one of our national sponsors. We couldn't do this without our sponsors, folks, and that is the Bonati Spine Institute. I've seen a lot of doctors over the years, a lot of physicians. I haven't seen anybody quite like this man. He's patented his procedures. People travel in from all over the world, that suffer with bad backs, bad necks, and problems. And a lot of people, just a quality of life. I think we're all getting a little older. We can all use a little help sometimes in that area. But anyways, Bonati.com, and you'll see more about that just ahead here. It's Malcolm Out Loud. We'll be right back with you here.
World-renowned Dr. Bantner created the Bantner Spine procedures to minimize surgery, scarring, and recovery. 45,000 procedures have resulted in over 94% satisfaction. Nearly half our patients suffer from failed surgeries at other facilities. Bantner succeeds where others fail.
Welcome back to American Values at the Crossroads. It's Malcolm Out Loud here. Privacy and security is the topic today we're taking on. And can we have both? Is it even possible? And I talk about this all the time on radio and television here. And again, welcome to our national radio audience and television. Well, good to have you here. So again, you look at all the events going on around the world, my friends, and you got to question yourself, are governments worldwide overreacting under the guise of security? We all know, and Adam was pointing that out in the first segment, that it's like the more power you give to these people, the more they want, the more they're going to take. And these people, meaning politicians, I'm speaking of. And that really is the question that I worry about. So let's bring it back here again to the panel real quickly. I want to, again, right to my side here is Attorney Adam Bantner, and again, a criminal defense attorney and a guy who is sort of a tech nerd as well, keeps his eyes on things, and political junkie. So we like those kind of people, huh? Technology expert Bob Francis is right near him, and Bob's again founder and managing director of Jefferson Partners, and focuses on again multimedia, wireless technologies. Bob is just a smart guy, and technology. And so pleased to have Kirk Burton here as well. He's got two of my favorite words: innovation and knowledge. Innovation, knowledge guru. So we can't beat that. So good to have the panel here and talk about this. I want to jump right back into it here and talk about. All right, one of the things we discuss about governments and specifically the state now to America in having all this information, and we're going to peel this onion a little bit more here now in the sense of privacy security, okay? All this information, Bob, that you pointed out in the first segment about, like, okay, so the government has all the information, all the emails, all the data, all the phone calls, all the everything, text, all this stuff is being stored in these massive data centers. We reported on this months ago, actually reported Utah, they just built a massive new center. They've got several of them around the country, and it's where they put all this stuff. You know, it's like a closet back home that you got is just full of stuff. That's what these data centers do for them, is just put all this stuff there. Now, a lot of this stuff they don't need, but they have these sophisticated systems where they look at all the algorithms and back and forth. They study everything, and they're looking for comparisons and things, and when they need it, they pull it up. What I'm worried about is what happens if this information falls into the wrong hands, which is, Bob, what you touched on early on. And I can go a step further than that as well, guys. Speaking about what I see as a problem is rogue agents. Now, I don't say that to be funny or to be passive about it, but we don't know if rogue employees within these government agencies can be trusted with our sensitive information. And would we want them to have it, this kind of sensitive information? It's already happening where it's been used against us, guys. And there are samples. We've talked about them on radio verbatim. The IRS has had problems with that. The HHS, the health systems in this country, has had problems with that. And Homeland Security's had problems with that, where the information has been gathered and it's used against the people in some fashion. And in a couple of cases, by the way, the government agencies who work for the government say, oh, it's just a joke, just kidding around, just going after some people, just having a little fun, people I didn't like, or some friends, just getting back at good old Teddy. Oh, great. That actually happened. Under the payroll. It's just like, it's mind-blowing, really. So again, it's back to how does government use the information, and what if rogue agents decide to mess with us? Kirk, let's start with you here. This is kind of an argument. This is kind of an argument against those people that say, and I love this saying when people say this. You guys, you know what I'm talking about here. And people will say to me, "Oh well, Malcolm, I have nothing to hide. I got nothing to hide. Here it is, Mr. Government." I mean, to me, that's equivalent to saying, okay, I'm an idiot, but, take all my stuff and I'll trust you. What do you think about that?
Well, you're right. We all have, so much of our information is stored online today, our personally identifiable information, which makes it easy to steal our identity.
Right.
And so many people have it. Law enforcement people have it. Vendors have it. Companies have it. Our insurance companies got it. And we're depending upon them to keep it safe.
Right.
We're depending upon them to use the latest technology, encryption, whatever it takes to keep it safe. And unfortunately, they can't keep up.
They don't seem like they can keep up. And as we're seeing things, and I think we're only seeing, Bob, the tip of the iceberg right now, right? What do you think?
Well, I think the issue is that if you gather all of this information and put it somewhere, then the chances are very, very high that a number of people who have no reason to collect it but have access will misuse it. Right. And we've had so many examples. And I frankly, as a technologist, don't know how I could possibly encrypt the information or secure the information so that no one could have it. Or conversely, if I give it to the government, give everything to them, how could they protect it? It's just too much. It's just not a solvable problem, in my opinion.
The more information you aggregate, the more attractive a target it becomes.
Absolutely right.
And let's face it, they're aggregating everything. I mean, there's so much of it, Kirk. I mean, we do everything. It's just like, everything we do today is online. Everything.
Yeah, everything's online, everything's out there, and the way I look at it, at least the idea of a rogue agent, is it's almost a cost-benefit analysis. One, you have to make the decision from a governmental perspective. Okay. One, whether we're even going to collect the data, whether it's going to be worthwhile as a law enforcement tool, as a crime prevention, as a terror prevention, and if it's worth that while, okay, so we're gathering it. Then the next step is of course, you got to screen the people that are working that data, but you'll never eliminate the threat of a rogue. There's always going to be that possibility. So then it's just a cost benefit. Well, is the the danger of that rogue and what he can do with it, is that outweighed by the protection this is affording us? And I think that's what most people struggle with, because we want to be safe, but we also want to be private, and so that's the tug of war.
And it is a tug of war, which brings me to the fact of a current event. President Obama has just proposed new legislation aimed at fostering increased sharing between government agencies and the private sector, public-private sort of union, if you will. And this is all to, as he says, help improve cybersecurity. Okay, so this is the message. Again, this is not to be overly political here, but this is the same person who ran 2 campaigns against the establishment and was going to fix all this because the previous administration was over the top. He's doubled down on it all now, it seems. At least that's what it appears to be. This is kind of an argument against those people that, again, say, oh, well, I have nothing to hide, I think, and so they put it all out there. And I think that's just one of the dumbest things to say, that people say. It's like, okay, you're an idiot if you think, you're going to give it all up because you have nothing to hide. Now, the legislation that Obama is proposing would encourage, he uses the word encourage, so they're not saying they're going to twist your arm yet, Adam. We're going to encourage, okay, the private sector to share cyber threat information with the Department of Homeland. Now, they also encouraged Google and Yahoo and Microsoft and all those companies and Apple. They encouraged them with agents with guns in their front offices. They encouraged them to come up with it, too. I read all the background on that, by the way. That was encouragement, too.
That was under the legal authority granted by CALEA, the Communications Assistance to Law Enforcement, and that law was passed some time ago. Yeah, and that's where they penetrated all of the networks.
And they were told they couldn't talk, Bob. You can't talk to the public about this. They had to keep it quiet.
You can't tell anyone we told you we were doing it.
And now a lot of that started to leak out because everything became so public with Snowden and everything that happened after that. It was like, okay, All right, so President Obama made the following comment. He says this, and I quote, these are his words: with the Sony attack that took place, with the Twitter account that was hacked by Islamist jihadist sympathizers, it just goes to show how much more work we need to do in this country, both public and private sector, to strengthen our cybersecurity. And the president said this while he was addressing congressional leaders, okay? Now, he spoke to the Republican leaders of the House and Senate, and he said, I think we agreed that this is an area where we can work hard together, get some legislation done, and make sure that we are much more effective in protecting the American people from these kinds of cyber attacks. Do you buy that, Adam?
Not necessarily. I think most of the stuff the government done is well intentioned, but extremely misguided. And I think this is a prime example here, where we're saying, give us all this information so we can protect you. But what it's really doing is invading everybody's privacy. It's invading these businesses' right to operate free from government intrusion. The people who use their services, it's certainly affecting them, and it's causing people to make a hard choice. Well, I've grown to like all this technology. I like this access. Do I want to withdraw from it so that I don't have to give up my privacy? So it's completely an overreach, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's an overreach, but we don't know what the end game is really going to be yet, because he's just proposing this, and what kind of fights there are going to be in Congress over it all, I'm not even sure yet. And it's so hard to say, because a lot of what we're talking about isn't a Republican problem or a Democratic problem. A lot of this, the lines begin to blur, because Republicans have abused it just as much as the Democrats have, and sometimes even more so. And they hide under the guise of, conservative, live your life and we won't mess with you. But to me, it's all a farce. What do you think?
Well, I think you're right. It's the reactionary approach again. After 9/11, we did some things that I was thinking back, President Eisenhower would be rolling over in his grave to say, you authorized what? Yeah. We're doing what to the American public now? Yeah. And it's a reaction. We're scared. We're terrorized. We don't want it to happen again. I get that. It forces a reaction. Yeah.
As you were talking about Eisenhower, my mind went immediately to President Nixon. We threw him the hell out of office, more or less, based on the fact of technology, the wiretap and all that went on. Yeah. By golly, we've gone so far past that stage today. This is nothing. Right. He probably would have got a Congressional Medal of Honor if it happened today. We wouldn't have impeached his son or threatened to, Bob, yeah?
That's right.
Poor Nixon. He was before his time.
Well, the thing that that concerns me is that as we know, they've been listening. The government's been listening illegally to international conversations for many years. Unfortunately, with the internet, there's no port where they can plug in. So what they're asking industry to do is to become a spy on their customers.
Right.
There's where I have some real problems. I mean, I would not agree to spy on any of my customers. I mean, and first of all, I don't agree with the spying to begin with, but nevertheless, there's a certain trust. But my real problem, Malcolm, is that I don't think the people today that are not as old as I am understand the slippery slope of giving up a little bit because, well, we need it for security, and not understand the end game and where it will really lead.
All right, so talk to me about that end game, because you're one of the smartest people I know in this particular area, Bob, who, based on what you just said, I get it, and you get it. So what is that end game, and where do you think we go?
Well, I think the intent of some governments and some politicians is to absolutely do everything, know everything, do everything, and control everything so that the individuals are not permitted to do their own life or make their own decisions. And we see it creeping every day. I mean, now they're telling people what your kids can eat in school. You can't do this, you can't do that. It's just this creeping nanny state that we have that concerns me a great deal. And it's funny, all of us created the best, most robust, most exciting country on the face of the earth, not doing it that way.
Right.
Now, why do we think we need to change?
Okay, so you followed CISPA, right? All that conversation, obviously, you were on top of that. You guys, we all know what CISPA was, and the proposal unveiled this week would allow increased sharing of information on the cyber threats from the private sector with protection from liability, as I stated. Now, the measure would criminalize the sale of stolen financial data and require companies to notify consumers about data breaches, okay, is what they're saying. The plan would allow for the prosecution of the sale of botnets. Now, if you don't know what a botnet is, it's a network of private computers that are infected with some sort of malicious software, I guess. Is that right, Bob?
That's right.
What you call it? Yeah. That's a botnet, B-O-T-N-E-T. The plan, again, would allow for the prosecution of the sale of botnets, would criminalize the overseas sale of stolen U.S. financial information like credit card and bank account numbers and commit ID theft, and would give courts the authority to shut down botnets engaged in distributed denial of service attacks and other criminal activity. So obviously CISPA wasn't liked. Congress didn't like that approach, right, Bob? I mean, it didn't get anywhere. Yep. But is this following suit, what he's proposing now?
Well, yes, it is following suit under a different name, but let's look at it for a moment.
Okay.
I agree that criminals should be punished for doing the things that we're talking about. If you steal my data and use it, you should pay a price for that. Mm-hmm. The thing that I find difficult, though, is that you're going to go to a supplier of services to me and tell them to spy on me. Mm-hmm. There's got to be a different way of doing it.
Right.
And the other concern I have is to say to a company in France that you have to give me the information on what Bob's doing in the United States. Mm-hmm. When they finish laughing. And we've seen that with some other things.
Well, the government keeps saying that this initially started where we were using it against other people around the world, not Americans. That's how it all started, really. Right. It's, we're going to protect you and we're going to keep, whatever, with someone from over there, wherever over there was. Now, but they're taking everything and throwing it in the pail and seeing what's what. So I guess the question, I don't know if any of you know, what kind of legislation would we like to see implemented, if any? What is the answer here? Do you know, Adam?
Well, I think one of the ways to fight back against some of this stuff is right back to our roots, and that's the U.S. Constitution. The Fourth Amendment, of course, protects us from warrantless searches and seizures and unreasonable searches. And the courts, to their credit, have started fighting back a little bit.
Yeah.
And of course, some of the unreasonable searches and seizures, the Florida Constitution has a similar provision, and the Florida Constitution actually has a right to privacy, which as of right now doesn't have much teeth. There hasn't been much put around it.
The whole Constitution doesn't have much teeth, but go ahead.
Well, the U.S. Constitution doesn't even have a right to privacy. It's been read into the due due process clause. But in any event, Florida courts have started fighting back a little bit. There's a Florida Supreme Court case that came out, I think, last year or even this year on cell phone towers. And they said that police can't just go straight to cell phone towers to find out somebody's location if they're doing a criminal investigation without a warrant. And the problem with that previously is they would say, well, you don't have standing to enforce that. It's a private company. Cops can go to them. You as a citizen don't have that right. That's not part of your privacy. And the court for the first time said, no, actually, you can protect that right. That's your information. You're not agreeing to give up your location simply by using a service.
Right.
So the courts are starting to take a stand. Same with the Supreme Court as well, the U.S. one. They're saying that you can't dive into cell phones and some other stuff that's promising.
Well, they're in a, right. That's a great point, Adam. Yeah. They're in a hard place, that rock and hard place kind of thing, and I'm seeing it now. And maybe there are some little signs of encouragement. I hope and pray, because we, again, our three branches of government, we expect the Supreme Court to, at the end of the day, protect our Constitution because the muckety mucks aren't doing it up the road. But many times they don't even do that for us, and you kind of want to question what really is going on there. But maybe some of those glimmers of hope maybe give us all something to hold on to. I don't know. I think now to get to the meat of all of this, my friends, we talk about the political aspect of this, but the real question you have to ask yourself today is, should we fear government intrusion or terrorism? I mean, where's the trade-off really come? Is the invasion of our privacy a trade-off? Is that the deal here? And what about all these consumer attacks? And I want to get the point of wisdom from all these guys to look ahead 10 years down the road and tell us what we look like in this country. There should be some interesting answers, I think. I'm dying to hear Bob's for that. God only knows. But in any event here, so we're going to pause just a moment here, and I just want to give a shout-out quickly again to our national sponsor, Closets by Design. They're an outstanding organization based out of California, LA, all over the country. You catch them everywhere. They've got great these outlets that come to your home. I used them some years ago before I ever knew that they'd be doing business with us. And I needed a few things done at the house. They did such impeccable work at the closet, and then they do all this other stuff. So closetsbydesign.com. Check them out. I actually found it cheaper than buying furniture in some cases. Some of the stuff you can have built, in your home is kind of cool stuff. So closetsbydesign.com. If you use the code out loud and you tell them that, you actually will get a discount, free installation, and they'll give you a discount on that. It's 40% off or so. It's pretty significant. So anyways, use that. We'll take a quick pause. We'll be back with our panel, Privacy and Security, and get to the meat of it in just a moment here. Be back with you.
Get your home organized now with Closets by Design and get 40% off plus free installation. To schedule a free in-home design consultation, call 1-800-BY-DESIGN or visit closetsbydesign.com for more details.
Hey, back with you here again. Welcome back to our national radio audience and our television audience. Good to have you with us. Malcolm Out Loud. Privacy and security is the conversation. American values at the crossroads. This is clearly an American value, and we are at the crossroads, my friends. There's no doubt about that. A lot of events have changed our freedoms and our security, and certainly threatened our privacies here. Have a stellar panel here. I want to introduce you again. Attorney Adam Bantner, just to my side here. Technology expert Bob Francis, Kirk Burton. And before we're done, I want to give you their websites as well, so you can track these guys down and ask them some questions and as you wish, and participate a little bit more on things. Again, connect with us as well, by the way, on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, at Malcolm Out Loud. There's only one on planet Earth. It's not hard to find Malcolm Out Loud, I assure you. So, all right. So we talk about. I want to just pose the question to each of you, and I'm going to start. I'm going to start with you, Adam, just because you're an attorney, and so you may have a different answer. I don't know, but do you fear government intrusion or terrorism more? Which one?
Government intrusion.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Terrorism, as you mentioned, the odds of us personally being struck by terrorism are slim. And once you start giving into terrorism, then you're changing your whole way of life. You're changing a country. Whereas government intrusion, I mean, that's done without outside forces. That's done from within. That's our representatives, our citizens doing it to ourselves. And the urge for power and control scares me much more than somebody over in the Middle East or a lone wolf over here in this country. That scares me much, much more.
You know what worries me about count this with what Adam just said is how many times do I say to you that our problem moving forward ahead is going to be within, not outside. It's within our country we need to worry about, and you just hit it right there. You know?
Yeah, I mean, you look at our leaders and you look at the control and the power they have over every citizen. It's much more than any terrorist will have.
That makes this conversation very, very relevant. Bob, I almost hate to ask you the question, but do we fear government intrusion or terrorism?
Well, I think you know the answer, Malcolm. Clearly, I'm most concerned with government. And my attitude, my position is that, you know, the reason that the terrorists are continuing to pursue more aggressively the actions, and the beheadings and things like this, the shootings, is because they get publicity. And I think my strategy would be not to give them that publicity, and they would have to find something else to do to get their message across. But I'm really concerned about about losing my privacy and my information. And my concern is that, as I said a few minutes ago, people today don't understand the slippery slope. They haven't had the training that we had in school of reading, writing, arithmetic, and history. And I was pleased to read in the paper today that Arizona is the first state in the United States to now require a test to graduate and get your high school degree on civics. Now, we all took civics. Do they still have civics in school? I'm not sure. We took, American history. We took world history. We took civics. I'm a Texan. I took Texas history. Those are not as frequently taught today, but I'm really delighted to see. And I think this is what I'm looking for, is that kind of return to basics.
Well, this generation is, they're not spending much time on those things because they're spending time online. That's where this generation is. Back to the whole conversation we're having, Kirk, So do you have a different answer, or with the government intrusion or terrorism? Or
I hate to join into group speak, but no, it's government intervention.
I was hoping you'd say the other, but go ahead, sir. Well, can't lie about it, so come on.
And the issue is that you can't... This is not a problem that we can legislate our way out of. Legislation is not the answer. You can't legislate what you don't understand.
It's kind of hard to legislation common sense too, isn't it?
And technology is moving faster than policy right now, faster than law right now. We're not keeping up with technology. It's changing daily. So all we're going to do is create more problems for ourselves and try to stick our finger in the hole in the dike.
Okay. So let me ask you this big question, and then I want to come back and talk about how we protect ourselves. But let me ask you this big question. This isn't a question to be cute. This is a real question. If you take out and dust off your crystal ball, each of you, okay, and you take a look ahead and you say, okay, we're 10 years down the road now, all right. What does it look like? Not knowing where all the events are going to play out in the next 10 years with our political leaders and around the world and everything, whether we get a handle on things or a grasp of things. What does it look like 10 years from now? And I'm talking about the topic, Kirk, of privacy versus security, whether we've been able to successfully jump that hurdle, you understand, and maintain our privacy and have national security. What does America look like in that regard 10 years from now?
So I think that, unfortunately, we're going to give up more of our personal information. More of our lives are going to be monitored because of the technology. The technology is going to do things for us, provide easy access to services. It's going to make life easier, and in order to take advantage of that, we're going to give up some of our privacy. As the Internet of Things grows and everything starts to connect with everything else, we're going to clap our hands and go, yay. And you never realized, I read an article last week that in Florida, Pinellas County, Hillsborough County, an average of once every 12 minutes, if you're out and about, you're on camera somewhere.
Right.
Somebody's security camera's got you. Somebody's dash camera's got you.
Well, cameras are everywhere.
They are.
And that's not even counting the phones, cameras, and everything else they have.
And they're being used.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
Look what happened in France. They have cameras every few, but they knew they had pictures of these people.
Well, I had a friend in a traffic accident, and within about 20 minutes, the officer came back and said, I verified your story. I got the security footage from the CVS on the corner. and it shows what happened.
You know, this really is an environment of George Orwell. You know, I don't know if there's a club like this. Maybe we should start one, Bob, the George Orwell Club or something. It'd be kind of cool. I always loved that book. It was always interesting, you know. It's like weird. It's got to be the George Orwell Club or something about Orwell. I don't know, something about that that's American or something. I don't know. So, Bob, 10 years from now.
I'm absolutely optimistic that.
All right.
Yeah, I really am. I think that our younger people are beginning to see now that putting so much stuff of so much of their personal information on the internet, the damage being done to giving up the privacy. I'm optimistic that the conservative pendulum is in our favor.
It's about to swing back.
I believe so. I'm hoping so.
We're starting to see that with Congress and other things.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's a sign if they don't blow it. We'll see. Interesting. So you are optimistic, and you believe we're going to get a handle on it.
I certainly do.
You do, yeah. Which is really, it's funny. Every time our country is tested, we somehow are able to stand the test, aren't we?
Yep.
We're able to do it, Bob. Yeah, thank God. Back to you being Adam, an optimist yourself, or at least you've stated that. You may leave here and cut yourself out. I don't know. But go ahead. So tell me what you see 10 years from now, buddy.
Well, what I see in 10 years is I like him, I'm an optimist with it, but for different reasons. I'm not optimistic in Washington. The politics of fear is just too easy a sell to the general public. It gets elections. I passed this. I did this to get tougher on this. And so I just don't think it's going to come from Washington. But my optimism comes from the American people. I do think the grassroots is starting to recognize that their civil liberties are being lost. And I also think the courts, I know it's a lot of faith to put in 9 men and women in black robes, but I think they are starting to come around, and they struggled initially with how to match technology versus this document that was drafted over 200 years ago, the Constitution, and how to mesh them. But I think they're getting back to some of those founding principles, and I think it's going to at least somewhat rein in what Washington's doing.
We seem to be losing ground with that Constitution. I don't know, and it's just I don't think. Again, I don't think our new generation. I don't think they fully understand the validity of that document. You know, does everybody agree with that?
I agree.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I think they've lost the validity of that document. They really don't understand how sacred it is. You see? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
It's quite frankly, it's just not taught that much. I mean, personally, I didn't really come to love the Constitution and understand it till I probably hit law school, quite frankly. So that was 23 years old before I finally realized how important a document it is.
Let's face it, it's what really makes our country magnificent. It makes us really the greatest country. And you know, being an optimist myself, 10 years from now, I will say to you that I do see that I am also very optimistic that Americans always pull down for more. We get the job done, and I think we correct ourselves. We use history. We got to look back to see what's happened, and then to be able to fix the current and the future this way, you know. And but I am hopeful with that. So, Bob, I want to come to you next, and I want to talk about what can consumers do to protect themselves at this point? Not to get all into the nitty stuff, but what are some of the things? I'm going to ask each of you that, and especially you as the attorney, I'd be curious to see what you say, Adam. But what can consumers do to protect themselves in these environments? Bottom line.
Well, what we're really concerned with here is protecting the information that you have made available to everyone. So, step number one: don't give out information you don't have to give out. For example, it's fairly common for everyone along the street to ask for your Social Security number. The answer is no.
I get nervous when people ask for that.
I don't give it. I mean, you have to really convince me that.
Exactly.
So number two, get away from paper documents. People go along the street taking documents out of your mailbox. So just begin to smarten up and become private. I have a Facebook account, and I've sent one Facebook answer in years. I use it to gather information, but I don't put my information out. Period. Just don't.
Well, no, but everyone else, you're the opposite of what everybody's doing.
I understand that.
Are you just too paranoid or what?
I guess I'm paranoid. That's probably a good word.
I don't know. I don't know if it's a good word or a bad word. I don't know.
I just feel like that I don't want everyone having all of my information to misuse.
Yeah, because you've seen it firsthand, and so you're the extreme over here. But I think a lot of people are just way too open on the social media. They get into all kinds of stuff, and I think you've set up for the bad people to attack you and do all kinds kinds of things. It's wild what they put on social media.
Yeah, well, that's
nuts.
That's the society we live in today. It's a very narcissistic society that everybody is so self-centered that they think what I am eating for lunch is so important that I need to share it with my 300 friends.
Oh, and the opinions
take care.
I know. That's it. I mean, I don't have time to go back and forth like that all day long. Adam, what do you think? What can we do to protect ourselves from a legal standpoint?
Just like Bob. I mean, there's not much you can do from a legal standpoint, but like Bob said, a lot of it's self-screening. You just have to be disciplined in what you're putting out there. I mean, I represent clients that will be on Facebook, and there they are posting a picture with themselves with 2 guns and a bag of marijuana next to them on Facebook, and sure enough, the sheriff's office finds that exact same gun, and there he is holding it. So it's just you got to be careful. I mean, I'm not telling criminals how to commit crimes, but just as a general principle, you got to watch what you put out there. You really do.
Yeah. All right. The last few minutes I have, I want to not lose sight of this, Kirk. Unless you have something else to add to that, what they just said on that.
I would just say pay attention.
Pay attention. All right. All right. We talk about this national security. Okay. So what I want to know is this, and this is a tough one. Okay. How do we maintain our national security? How do we do it if we're not gathering the information? How do we do that? And who wants to go first on that? Because this is a hard question. This is a tough one. How do we maintain? And I know, Bob, you're against a lot of that. Mm-hmm. And I've often said, okay, Bob Francis, so maybe I'll start with you for that reason. So as in all justification to the other gentleman, but quite frankly, so all right. So national security is important. So how do we now keep our how do we do it? The bad guys are out there. They're trying to grab us. They're trying to get our information. How do we do that and keep our privacy? Is there a secret way is there some method to this? How do we do it? I don't know.
I don't know of a secret way of doing it.
Okay.
But I do know that there need to be certain limits placed on the gathering, but there also does have to be the ability to gather that information. To me, the issue is the misuse of the data more than the gathering. Although, since we can't prevent the misuse, then we have to prevent the gathering. I mean, and that's the dichotomy.
So if we don't gather it, then we can't misuse it.
Right.
But then how do we be safe?
That's right.
Yeah.
If we don't have it,
But then is that just a pass and a card to raise hell for the terrorist? I mean, I don't know.
It could be, but on the other hand, I would feel a lot more comfortable if I was confident of the ethics of our security forces, the police and stuff.
Well, maybe with your optimism earlier, maybe that'll happen in the next few years. I don't know. Stay tuned, right?
Yeah.
Kirk, what do you think?
I don't think you can ensure security without the information.
You know.
So the question is, how much information do you need, and then how do you gather that?
Right.
Do you use technology? Do you use people like we used to?
So are you in favor of some gathering of information or not?
I am in favor of some gathering of information.
And you're in favor of them keeping it somewhere, obviously, because they got to keep it somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So you're in favor of that somehow. Okay.
The same way that they would go and get a warrant for a wiretap if they thought that I was involved in some.
Well, they're supposed to get warrants for all these things, but they don't do it anymore. They just go ahead and ask for forgiveness later. Adam, what do you think from an attorney standpoint?
I mean, if I knew the answer to this question, I'd probably have an office up in D.C. somewhere.
You'd have a Nobel Peace Prize. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I mean, how do we maintain a free society? I think we do it. I'm more of almost kind of an absolutist. I don't like the government taking our information, especially without warrant. I like the courts are a decent check, not a perfect one, but at least it's a check. So I would prefer the government not have the information. Part of the cost of a free society is it's also a trusting society. And there's always going to be that risk. You can never control it entirely. I'd rather be free and take that risk and just have, well, part of what emboldens the terrorists even more is when we do capitulate to them, when we do react to what they do, when we do take away more of our freedoms, it emboldens them because it tells them what they're doing is working. Yep. So I think we got to maintain our freedoms and from a national policy level, just kind of not react as much.
Interesting answers to really a very difficult question, and it's a balance. And you know what, folks, Americans are going to have to figure this out. I mean, I'm telling you right now, it's not going to go away. None of this is going away. So you can blink your eye or pretend or be ignorant or pretend it doesn't matter. It matters. And everyone's going to have to get involved and get loud, as I say. Attorney Adam Bantner, again, his website, BrandonLegalGroup.com. BrandonLegalGroup.com. You'll see all these on the screen here. Again, Bob Francis, MilfordCommunications.com. MilfordCommunications.com. You can track him there. And Kirk Burton, his site, InnovationTechSolutions.com. InnovationTechSolutions.com. techsolutions.com. So you can check those guys out right there. Connect with us again, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, guys. It says try to get a conversation going. Again, we thank you for joining us from radio, and it's good to be with you here. Again, subscribe back at getinvolvedgetloud.com. And remember, folks, our values do matter, and we are at the crossroads. Everyone's got to get involved. Get involved, get loud.